What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of High Mythology, the show where we get higher than Solomon Carr, attorney at law, bird attorney, and tell you guys silly stories from mythology and folklore. Tonight, we're going to be bringing back part two of the Peter Pan.
In Kensington Garden.
Peter Pan in Kensington Garden. Peter Pan picked a precious paddle.
How Peter Pan became Peter Pan.
How Peter Pan paddled.
Now, if you're listening to this
Pan's
one and you
Peter.
haven't watched the other one, you're going to want to listen to the other one because I'm not going back.
Yeah, this is part two. This is part two.
Continuing. We're in the middle of a chapter here.
Yeah, we're continuing on. We're talking about Peter Pan getting a paddle. And some plums and parsnips.
No. No, but he's got a flute right now.
He's got a flute. but he can play the skin flute like nobody's business. Uh-oh.
He's not Jewish, so he definitely didn't get... That much I can tell you from the story.
That much I can tell you from the story. Yeah, it's a big part of the story. Huge, was there. Yeah. Okay, Kimbo, without further ado, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I shall tell you presently how he got his paddle.
Presently?
Long before the time of the opening of the gates, he comes and steals back to the island, for people must not see him. He is not so human as all that. But this gives him hours for play, and he plays exactly as real children play. At least he thinks so. And it is one of the pathetic things about him that he often plays quite wrongly.
Damn, author. Yeah, it's sad to watch. To be honest, it's sad to watch.
It's very sad. You see, he had no one to tell him how children really play, and for the fairies are a bit more or less in hiding until dusk. And so, know nothing. And though the birds pretend that they could tell him a great deal, when the time came for telling, it was wonderful how little they really knew.
I don't know. Walk around yelling and stuff.
They told him the truth about hide and seek, and he often plays it by himself. But even the ducks on the round pond could not explain to him what it is that makes the pond so fascinating to boys. Every night, the ducks have forgotten all the events of the day, except for a number of pieces of cake thrown at them. They are gloomy creatures, and they say that cake is not what is not what it is in their younger days.
The sadness of the picture of him playing, just watching him play hide and seek. What's he doing now? Why is he hiding behind that log? He's playing hide and seek. Doesn't he know someone needs to come find him? He doesn't. He's just going to stay there until he gives... Wow, so this sad. Game is boring.
So Peter had to find out many things for himself. He often played ships at the round pond, but his ship was only a hoop which he had found on the grass. So of course he had never seen a hoop, and he wondered what it was, how you played with them, and decided that you can play at pretending that they are boats. So this hoop always sank at once, but he waded in for it, and sometimes he dragged it gleefully around the rim of the pond, and he was quite proud to think that he had discovered what boys do with hoops. That's so sad.
It's a boat. Why does it keep sinking? Because I'm cursed by God.
Another time when he found a child's pail, he thought it was for sitting in. And so he sat so hard in it that he could scarcely get out of it.
Sorry, that was a misquote. It shat.
Also, he found a balloon. It was bobbing up about on the hump, quite as if it was having a game by itself. And he caught it, and after an exciting chase. But he thought it was a ball, and when Jenny Wren had told him that the boys kicked the balls, so he kicked it. And after that, he could not find it anywhere. It was gone.
Flew up. Yeah, he found a red balloon that belonged to some clown that was in a sewer, but the clown decided to not eat him because of all the sadness.
Perhaps the most surprising thing he found was a perambulator.
Ah!
It was under a lime tree near the entrance to the Fairy Queen's winter palace, which is within the circle of the 7 Spanish chestnuts.
In case you were wondering, in case you want to go visit her royal palace.
And Peter approached it warily, for the birds had not mentioned such a thing to him. Lest it was alive, he addressed it politely, and then, as it gave no answer, he went nearer and felt it cautiously. He gave it a little push, and it ran from him, which made him think it must be alive after all. But as it had run from him, he was not afraid. So he stretched out his hand to pull it to him, but by this time it had ran at him, and he was so alarmed that he leapt the railing and scudded away out to his boat.
Fuck this place.
You must not think, however, that he was a coward, for he came back the next night with a crust in one hand and a stick in the other, but the perambulator was gone. And he never saw another one like it.
He's all prepared. He's like, I'm going to go back. I don't know what that thing was.
I'm going to
beat
feed
the
it,
shit
or
out
I'm
of
going to
it.
beat the shit out of it. It's either going to like me by feeding it, or
Yeah, but I'm
is
going to
death.
feed it bread or beat the shit out of it. I haven't decided yet, so I brought both.
he goes all Office Space on it.
Yeah. Die, motherfucker. Die, motherfucker. Die.
I have promised to tell you that also about his paddle. It was a child's spade, which he had found near St. Grover's Well, and he thought it was a paddle. Do you pity Peter Pan for making these mistakes?
Do you pity Peter Pan and Peter Pan's piddly paddle?
If so, I think it's rather silly of you. What I mean is that, of course, one must pity him now and then, but to pity him all the time would be a great impotence.
Impeturance.
He thought he had the most splendid time in the gardens, and to think that you have, it is almost quite as good as you really do have it.
Aha.
He played without ceasing, while you often waste time by being mad dog or Mary Annish. I don't know what the fuck Mary Annish is.
It's just comments from the. Yes, he's very mad dog and she's very Marianish,
I
if
don't
you know what
a
I
mad
mean.
dog is, but I know what a
Right?
raw dog is.
Fellow gentlemen. Right.
What's a mad dog?
What's a mad dog?
Is it a bad dog?
Bad dog. Mad dog's malt liquor.
A ball liquor?
Malt liquor. Malt liquor. Mad dog's the ball. No, but raw dog is.
It's like my dog licks balls too. Not mine.
Not mine.
But he's got his own
Yeah.
ball that he licks.
Okay, what he does on his own time.
He's just got the one.
Yeah, as long as
He's
he
been
pays
neutered,
rent, I
okay?
don't ask questions.
He never knew where they were. Woo. He could be neither of these things, for he had never heard of them, much like Kim.
So, yeah.
I've never heard of them either.
You
But do you
mad
think
dog.
do you think he is to be pitied for that? Oh, he was merry.
Oh.
He was as much merrier than you, for instance, as you are merrier than your father.
Oh,
Sometimes he
sick
fell.
burn.
Sometimes he fell like a spinning top from sheer merriment. Have you seen a greyhound leaping the fences of the garden? That is how Peter leaps them. Brick. And to think the music of his pipe. Gentlemen who have walked home at night write to the papers to say that they heard a nightingale in the gardens, but it was really Peter's pipe they hear. Of course, he had no mother at least. What use was she to him?
Yeah. He had no mother. What use was she anyway?
You can be sorry for him for that, but don't be too sorry, for the next thing I mean to tell you is how he revisited her. It was the fairies who gave him the chance.
Aw.
The lockout time. Chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
Actually, we're on 3.
Chapter
So if you like this so
lockout.
far, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit those buttons for us, folks.
With the buttons. Tell people you like it. Tell your friends. Tell your aunties. Tell your sisters. Tell
Also,
your
if you
mamas.
buy our merch, we get the money too. So
Yeah, so send us
Hey.
buy some merch. Yeah,
it's good shit on there.
it is.
You'll find it at the end of this.
Yeah, we'll tell you at the end. You gotta wait. You gotta listen to all this Peter Pan tomfoolery first.
We got a lot. We got a lot too. Yep. It is frightfully difficult to know how much about the fairies, and almost the only thing known for certain is that there are fairies wherever there are children. Long ago, children were forbidden in the gardens, and at that time there was not a fairy in the place. Then the children were admitted, and the fairies came trooping into that very evening. They can't resist following the children.
Now it's just lousy with fairies.
You think they're coming by with darkened windowed vans?
Yeah, a little problematic, if you ask me.
They can't resist following the children, but you seldom see them, partly because they live in the daytime behind the railings and where you're not allowed to go, and also partly because they are so cunning. They are not a bit cunning after lockout, but until lockout, my word.
That's the easiest explanation too. It's not even that they're in a faraway distant land. Like, why can't I see them during the day? They're behind this waist-high railing. It's one singular bar, and there's pretty much completely blocks us. There's no way we could possibly go under or over this railing.
Yes, yeah.
So there they live in peace.
When you were a bird, you knew the fairies pretty well, and you remember a good deal about them in your babyhood, which is a great pity you can't write down, for gradually you forget. And I have heard of children who declare that they had never once seen a fairy. Very likely if they said this in the Kensington gardens. They were standing looking at a fairy all the time. The reason they were cheated was because she pretended to be something else. This is one of their best tricks. They usually pretend to be flowers because their court sits in the fairy bison. And there's so many flowers there that all day long, along the baby walk, that a flower is the least likely thing to attract attention. They dress exactly like flowers, and they change with the seasons, putting on white when the lilies are in, and blue when the bluebells are, and so on. They like crocus and hyacinthia.
Hyacinths.
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 They like them the most. And they are partially to a bit of color. But tulips, especially white ones, when they are the fairy cradles, they consider garnish. They are sometimes put off dressing like tulips for days, so then the beginning of the tulips weeks is almost the best time to catch them. When they think that you are not looking, they skip along pretty lively. But if you look and they fear there is no time to hide, they stand quite still, pretending to be flowers.
It's funny that they're willing to, like, they're that into fashion. They're like, I am so into fashion that I will literally die before I will dress like a fucking tulip. Yeah. But everyone's gonna know you're out of place if you're, dressed like a rose standing on a tulip plant. I don't care. Let them eat me. Let them hop the railing if they can. It's an impenetrable fortress.
Then, after you have passed without knowing that they are fairies, they rush home to tell their mothers that they had such an adventure. The fairy bison, you remember, is all covered in the ground with ground ivy, from which they make their castor oil. With flowers growing in it here and there. Most of them really are flowers, but some of them are fairies. You can never be too sure of them. But a good plan is by walking by and looking the other way and then turn around sharply.
That doesn't make you look like a crazy person in a public garden at all.
Another good plan, which David and I sometimes follow, is to stare them down.
Just fucking mean mugging the flowers.
After a long time, they can't help but wink. And then you know for certain that they are fairies. There are also a number of them along the baby walk, which is a famous gentle place, as spots frequented by fairies are called. Mm-hmm. Once 24 of them had an extraordinary adventure.
See, I find the easiest way to find them amongst the flowers is to just pee on the flower bush.
That's so fucked up. Yeah. They were a girls' school out for a walk with the governess, and all wearing hyacinth gowns. Hyacinths. When she suddenly put her fingers to her mouth, and then they all stood on an empty bed and pretended to be hyacinths. Unfortunately, what the governess had heard was the two gardeners coming to plant new flowers in that very bed. They were wheeling a handcart with flowers in it and were quite surprised to find the bed occupied. One of the men said,
just standing in the dirt pretending to be flowers. Well, Okay, then. Be better to lift them high synthesis.
The other replied, having emptied the cart.
Duke's orders.
They dug up the boarding school and put the poor, terrified things into 5 rows. Of course, neither the governess nor the girls dare let out that they were fairies, so they were carted off away to a potting shed, out of which they escaped in the night without their shoes. But there was still a great row about it amongst the parents, and the school was ruined.
The fucking farmers just went with it. Well, who am I to judge whether or not this is a human being wearing a tiny little flower or an actual flower plant itself?
For their houses, it is no use looking for them because they are the exact opposite of our houses. You can see our houses by day, but you can't see them by dark. Well, you can see their houses by dark, for they are the color of night, and I have never heard of anyone yet who could see the night in the daytime. This does not mean that they are black, for night has its colors just as day has, but ever so much brighter. Their blues and reds and greens are just like ours with a light behind them. The palace is entirely built of many-colored glasses, and it is quite the loveliest of all royal residences. But the queen sometimes complains because the common people will peep in and see what she's doing.
Why did we have to build my bathroom out of glass as well?
They are very inquisitive folk and press quite hard against the glass.
just pressing his face again. Are you pooping?
And this is why their noses are mostly snubby.
Just fogging up the window. Can you stop doing that? My turds are shy. I can tell the toilet is glass too.
The streets are miles long and very twisty and have paths on each side of them of bright worsted.
Bratwurst?
Bright worsted.
Bratwurst pathways.
The birds used to steal the worsted for their nests, but the policeman has been appointed to hold on at the other end.
Cop flag. You know why I pulled you over, sir? Tweet, 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 tweet. Yeah, nope. I'm going to need to see your license and registration. What are you doing with that worst? Tweet, 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 tweet.
Mm-hmm. Let's go downtown.
Likely story. Yeah. That's it. Book him. Yeah. Take him down to bird jail.
One of the great differences between the fairy and us is that they never do anything useful. When the first baby laughed for the first time, his laugh broke into 1,000,000 pieces and they all went skipping about. That was the beginning of fairies. They looked tremendously busy, as if they had not a moment to spare. But if you were to ask them what they are doing, they could not tell you in the slightest.
Math.
They are frightfully ignorant, and everything they do is make-believe. They have a postman, but he never calls except at Christmas with his little box, and then, although they have been beautiful schools, nothing is taught in them. The youngest child, being chief person, is always elected mistress, and when she has called the roll, they all go out for a walk and never come back. It is very noticeable. It is a very noticeable thing that in fairy families, the youngest is always the chief person and usually becomes a prince or a princess. The children remember this and think it must be so amongst the humans also. And that is why they are often made uneasy when they come upon their mother frivolously putting new frills on her bassinet. You have probably observed that your baby sister wants to do all sorts of things that your mother and her nurse want to do, but want her not to do.
Yeah.
Such as to stand up at sitting down time and to sit down at stand up time. Or to wake up when she should be falling asleep, or to crawl on the floor when she is wearing her best frock, and so on.
Back in the day when that's all the trouble children could get into.
Besides, I'm surprised she wasn't wearing a corset already.
Yeah, she's a little shit. What does she do? She sits down during stand-up time, and she stands up during sit-down time. And seeing as how, it's the Victorian days, that's kind of all we do. So that's pretty much the whole day. Yeah.
And perhaps you put this down to naughtiness, but it is not. It is simply means that she is doing as she has seen the fairies do. She begins by following their ways, and it takes about 2 years for her to get into her human ways. Her fits of passion, which are awful to behold, are usually called teething, are no such thing. They are her natural exasperations because she doesn't because we don't understand her. Mm-hmm. Though she is talking an intellectible language, she is talking fairy.
And the teeth that come out of their skull, that's just a byproduct of that.
The reason mothers and nurses know what her remarks mean before other people know is that gooch means give it to me at once, while wah is why do you wear such a funny hat? Is because mixing so much with babies, they have picked up a little of the fairy language. Yeah.
So specific. Give me that thing. Okay, that's something a baby would say. Why are you wearing such a funny hat? It's just wah. Wah.
Of late, David has been thinking back hard about the fairy tongue. With his hands clutched to his temple, he had remembered a number of their phrases, which I should tell you someday if I don't forget. He has heard them in the days when he was a thrush. And though I suggested to him that perhaps it is really a bird language he is remembering, he says no. For these phrases are about fun and adventure, and the birds talked of nothing but nest building. He distinctively remembers that the birds used to go from spot to spot like ladies at a shop windows, looking at different nests and saying,
"Not my color. My dear. How would that do with a soft lining or a butt like will it tear? Ugh, what hideous trimming."
And so on. The fairies are exquisite dancers, and that is why one of the first things a baby does is to sign to you to dance to him, and then to cry when you do it. They hold their great balls in the open air.
Reminds me of my old gym teacher, really short shorts.
In what is called a fairy ring.
He always held his balls out in the open air.
In that fairy
tied
ring.
together with a fairy ring.
For weeks afterwards, you can see the rings on the grass. It is not there when they begin, but they make it by waltzing around and around. Sometimes you will find mushrooms inside the ring, and these are the fairy chairs that the servants have forgotten to clear away.
Yeah. And I came up with this entire story because I ate a bunch of those mushrooms. Yeah.
The chairs and the rings are the only telltale marks these little people leave behind, and they would remove those even if they were not so fond of dancing, that they towed all till the very moment of the opening of the gates. David and I once found a fairy ring quite warm. Something to eat in it, dude.
That's such a strange thing to add to, because you could just imagine him walking out like, look at that ring in the grass, and he's just touching it like, still warm. You just put your hand in some shit. No, that was a warm fairy coil. It comes from the fairies, when they do their dances, they leave hot coils of brown stuff.
Coiled up.
Just coils. Just steaming coils of brown.
You're disgusting.
It's a fairy coil. And it's still warm.
But there is also a way of finding out about the ball before it takes place. You know, the boards which tell you what time the gardens are to close today.
They put park closes at 6. Don't step over the railing. There's an entire civilization living over there.
They got to be closed all day. They go over and see the sign is closed, and they're like, "Party time!
Party time!
Mom's out of town.
Kensington Gardens will be closed today for some fairy balling."
Well, these tricky fairies sometimes slyly change the board on the ball night, and so it says the gardens are to close at 6:30, for instance, instead of at 7.
Poppycock.
This enables them to get begun half an hour early. To get begun.
Here we go. Pre-game, bro. Pre-game at my fairy house.
If on such a night we could remain behind in the gardens as the famous Mimi Mannering did.
Mimi.
Mimi? Mamie?
Mimi
Mannering.
memory.
I don't know even. Mimi?
Mimi memories.
We might see delicious sights, hundreds of lovely fairies hastening to the ball, the married ones wearing their wedding rings around their waists, and the gentlemen, all in uniform, holding up the ladies' trains, and linkmen running in front carrying winter cherries, which are the fairy lanterns, of course. The cloakroom
Of
where
course. What are you, fucking stupid? You don't know that?
because I never mentioned it once.
I know, yeah.
The cloakroom where they put their silver slippers and get the tickets for their wraps.
Tickets, please.
The flowers streaming up from the baby walk to look on and always welcome because they can lend a pin. The supper table with Queen Mab at the head of it, and behind her chair the Lord Chamberlain, who carried a dandelion on which he bows when Her Majesty wants to know the time.
Lord Chamberlain Dandelion.
The tablecloth varies accordingly to the season, and in May it is made of chestnut blossoms. The way fairy servants do this is the men, scores of them, climb up to the trees and shake the branches, and the blossoms fall like snow. Then the lady servants sweep it together by whisking their skirts until it is exactly like a tablecloth. And that is how they get their tablecloth.
And that is how they get their... He was definitely eating some of those fairy circle mushrooms. And they got like the fucking... They go up in the trees to make the tablecloth. And it's such a beautiful tablecloth. Fucking love that tablecloth, man.
Martha Stewart be all over that shit. I love Martha Stewart.
You're rambling again, Mr. Arthur. You seem to have got off on a tangent talking about tablecloths for 6 pages.
They have real glasses and real wines of 3 kinds, namely blackthorn wine, burberry wine, and cowslip wine.
And the queen pours out. Rosé.
And the queen pours out. But the bottles are so heavy that she just pretends to pour out. There is a bread and butter to begin with, and the size of a 3-penny bit. The cakes to end with, and they are so small that they have no crumbs. The fairies sit around on the mushrooms, and the first they are well behaved and always cough off the table, and so on. But after a bit, they are not so well behaved and stick their fingers into the butter, which is got from the roots of the old tree. And the really horrid ones crawl over the tablecloth, chasing sugar or other delicacies with their tongues.
The butter's still warm, too.
So they get really hyped up on sugar and wine. Yeah. And when the queen sees them doing this, she signs to the servants to wash up and put away. And then everybody adjourns to the dancing, and the queen walking in front while the Lord Chamberlain walks behind her, carrying 2 little pots. One of which contains the juice of wallflower, and the other contains the juice of Solomon's seal.
The juice of Solomon, bird attorney.
Just a seaman.
Solomon Carr, bird attorney at law.
Wallflower juice is good for reviving dancers who fall to the ground in a fit, and Solomon's seal juice is for the bruises. They bruise very easily.
Bruce fairies.
So you gotta put some of that jizz on his leg.
Thing about fairies is they're all anemic. They bruise really easy. They're really frail.
And when Peter plays faster and faster, they foot it till they fall down and fits. For, as you know, without my telling you, Peter Pan is the fairies' orchestra.
Everybody knows that.
Duh. He sits in the middle of the ring. And that's why it's so warm. He's not allowed to leave. He just pees right there, too.
Pees right there.
Takes a giant squiz.
Fairy coil.
Yeah. Leaves your big coil for you. He sits in the middle of the ring, and they would never dream of having a smart dance nowadays without him. PP is written in the corner of the invitation card sent out by all the really good families.
And a little bit of PP is also left in the corner.
They are grateful little people, too. And at that, the princess's coming-of-age ball, for they come of age on their 2nd birthday and have a birthday every month after, they gave him the wish of his heart. The way it was done was this. The queen adorned him to kneel and then said that for playing so beautifully that she would give him the wish of his heart. Then they all gathered around Peter to hear what his wish of his heart would be. But for a long time he hesitated, not being certain what it was himself. He asked her at last,
"If I choose to go back to my mother, could you give me that wish, huh?"
Now this question vexed them, for were he to return to his mother, they should lose his music. So the queen tilted her nose contemptuously and said,
"Pooh. Ask for a better wish than that, you basic bitch."
He inquired,
Is it quite a little wish?
The queen answered, putting her hands near each other.
"Oh, it's as little as Chamberlain Dandelion's tiny wiener over there."
He asked,
"What size is a big wish?"
and she measured it off of her skirt, and it was a very handsome length. Then Peter reflected this and said,
"Well then, I think I should have 2 little wishes instead of a big one. That's wish math."
Of course the fairies had to agree, though his cleverness rather shocked them. He said that his first wish was to go to his mother, but with the right to return to the gardens if he found her disappointing. His second wish... What a little bitch if you found her disappointing.
If I don't like the bitch, I'm coming back.
His second wish he would hold in reserve. They tried to dissuade him and even put obstacles in the way. The queen said,
"Okay, I can give you the power to fly to a house, but I can't open the fucking door for you. You gotta do something for yourself."
Peter said confidently,
"The window I flew out of will be open. Mother always keeps it open in the hope that I might fly back home."
The queen says,
"Yeah, well, how do you know that?"
Quite surprised, and really, Peter could not explain how he knew. He said,
I just know.
So as he persisted in his wish, they had to grant it. The way they gave him power to fly was this. They all tickled him on the shoulder, and soon he felt a funny itching in that part.
You can fly.
And then he rose up higher and higher and flew out away from the gardens and over the housetops. It was so delicious that instead of flying straight into his own home, he skimmed over St. Paul's to the Crystal Palace and back to the river and Regent Park. And by the time he reached his mother's window, he had quite made up his mind that his second wish should be to become a bird.
Bird.
The window was wide open, just as he knew it would be. And in he fluttered. And there was his mother lying asleep. Peter alighted softly on the wooden rail at the foot of the bed and had a good look at her. She laid with her head on her hand, and the hollow in the pillow was like a nest lined with her brown wavy hair. He remembered, though, that he had long forgotten it, that she always gave her hair a holiday at night. How sweet the frills of her nightgown were, and he was very glad that she was such a pretty mother. But she looked sad, and he knew why she was sad. One of her arms moved as if it wanted to go around something, but he knew what it was, and he knew what it wanted to go around. Peter says to himself,
"Oh, Mother, if you just knew who was sitting on the rail at the foot of the bed."
And very gently he patted the little mound of her feet made, and could see by her face that she liked it. He knew he had to but say mother to ever so softly, and she would wake up. They always wake up at once if it was you that says their name. Then she would give him such a joyous cry and squeeze him tight. How nice it would be to him. But oh, how exquisitely delicious it would be to her. That, I am afraid, is how Peter regarded it. In returning to his mother, he never doubted that he was giving her the greatest treat a woman can have. Nothing can be more splendid, he thought, than to have a little boy of your own. How proud of him they are, and the very right and proper too. But why does Peter sit so long on the rail? Why does he not tell his mother that he has come back? I quite shriek from the truth, which is why he just sat there in two minds. Sometimes he looked longingly at his mother, and sometimes he looked longingly out the window. Certainly it would be pleasant to be her boy again, but on the other hand, what times those had been in the gardens. Was he so sure that he could enjoy wearing clothes again? He's still butt-ass naked.
Butt-ass naked. Pooping wherever he pleases.
He popped off the bed and opened some drawers to have a look at his old garments. They were still there, but he could not remember how to put them on. The socks, for instance, were they worn on the hands or on the feet? Huh, Dustin?
Ah.
Kid socks go on the hands or the feet?
Depends on how you're feeling that day.
Yeah, you were so tired that morning. I was like, why are there socks on his hands?
Sometimes it happens.
But he was about to try one of them on his hand when he heard a great adventure. When he had a great adventure. Perhaps the drawer had creaked. At any rate, his mother woke up, for he heard her say,
Peter?
As if it were the most loveliest word in the language. He remained sitting on the floor and held his breath, wondering how she knew that he had come back. If she said Peter again, he meant to cry mother and run to her, but she spoke no more. She made little moans only, and when he next peeped at her, she was once more asleep, with tears in her face. It made Peter very miserable. And what do you think the first thing he did? Sitting on the rail at the foot of the bed, he played a beautiful lullaby to his mother on his pipe. He had made it up himself out of the way she said Peter. And he never stopped playing until she looked happy. He thought this so clever of him that he could scarcely resist waking her to hear her say,
Oh, Peter. Oh, how exquisitely you play.
However, as she now seemed comfortable, he again cast looks at the window, and you must think that he meditated flying away and never coming back. He had quite decided to be his mother's boy, but hesitated about beginning tonight. It was the second wish which troubled him. Second wish that troubled him.
He's still got one wish left. He doesn't want to give that up.
He no longer meant to make it a wish to be a bird, but to ask for a second wish seemed wasteful, and of course he could not ask for it without returning to the fairies. Also, if he put off asking for his wish too long, it might go bad.
It's got an expiration date.
It does.
Yeah.
It goes sour.
It goes sour. It's like milk.
Yeah, it's gross. He asked himself if he had not been too hard-hearted to fly away without saying goodbye to Solomon. He wistfully said to his sleeping mother,
I should awfully like to sail in my boat just one more time.
He quite argued with her as if she could hear him, and he said coaxingly,
It would be so splendid to tell the birds of this adventure.
And then he said solemnly and meant it.
I'll probably come back, though.
And in the end, he flew away.
Bye.
Twice he came back from the window wanting to kiss his mother, but he feared the delight of it might awaken her. So at last he played her a lovely kiss on his pipe, and then he flew back to the gardens. Many nights and even months passed before he asked the fairies for his second wish. And I am not so sure that I quite know why he delayed so long. One reason was that he had so many goodbyes to say, and not only to his particular friends, but to hundreds of favorite spots. Then he had to his last sail, and his very last sail, and then his last sail of all, and so on.
And so on. He just kept doing it.
Again, a number of farewell feasts were given in his honor, and another comfortable reason was that, after all, there was no hurry, for his mother would never weary of waiting for him. The last reason displeased old Solomon, for it was an encouragement to the birds to procrastinate. Solomon had several excellent mottos for keeping them at work, such as,
Never put off laying today because you can lay tomorrow. And in this world, there are no second chances.
And yet here was Peter, gaily putting off, and none of the worst for it. The birds pointed this out to each other, and they fell into lazy habits. But, mind you, though Peter was so slow in going back to his mother, he was quite decided to go back, finally. The best proof of this was his caution with the fairies. They were most anxious that he should remain in the gardens and play with them, and to bring this to pass, they tried to trick him into making such remarks as,
I wish the grass wasn't so wet.
And then some of them danced out out of time in hope that he might cry.
I do wish you would keep time.
Then they would have said that this was his second wish, but he smoked their designs as though on occasion he began, I wish, he always stopped in time. So when at last he said to them bravely,
I wish now to go back to my mother forever and always.
They had to tickle his shoulders and let him go. He went in a hurry in the end because he had dreamt that his mother was crying, and he knew what was a great thing she cried for, and that hug from her splendid Peter would quickly make her smile. Oh.
Oh, turns
felt
out
sure
the
of
grass was wet because he peed in it.
He felt sure of it.
He felt sure of it.
And so eager was he to be nestling in her arms that this time he flew straight to the window, which was always to be open for him.
He flies into the closed window. It's bah!
But the window was closed.
I think a bird hit the window. Did you hear that, honey?
I don't know where I'm at. You fuck me up. But the window was closed, and there were iron bars on it. And peering in, he saw his mother sleeping peacefully with her arms around another little boy.
The mom's like, last time I left this fucking window open, I woke up and there was shit and piss all over this house.
And no baby.
Right at the foot of my bed, there was poop.
Peter called,
Mother, mother.
but she heard him not, and in vain he beat his little limbs against the iron bars. He had to fly back, sobbing, to the gardens, and he never saw his dear again. What a glorious boy he had meant to be to her. And Peter, we would have made the greatest mistake. How differently we should all act on the second chance. But Solomon was right. There is no second chance, not for most of us. Mm-hmm. When we reach the window, it is a lockout time, and the iron bars are up for life.
There's no second chances. But if you're looking at getting put away behind iron bars for life, call Solomon Carr, bird attorney at law.
And this was written in 1906. Boom. That's it. That's all I got for you.
That's it. That's the whole story.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, in the next story, Solomon Carr has to defend Peter Pan in court because he finally gets brought up on public defecation charges.
Yeah, part 2.
Part 2.
I guess I'll be making part 3, right?
Yeah, and that rolls directly into Hook with Robin Williams.
I was going for like Deuce number 2.
Number Deuce, yeah. Part Deuce. Yeah, I hope you folks enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Hope you had fun. Yeah, be sure to like, share, subscribe.
Check out our merch
follow,
store.
Yeah, check out our merch store, teespring.com/high-mythology-merch.
Perfect. Find us on Twitter.
Yeah, at Howley Boys, HAOLE_BOYS. Find us there, talk shit.
Because that is mostly
like,
where Dustin is, because I do not fuck with any of that.
I do Twitter more than any of the other
I got a
stuff.
real job.
I got a real job. Yeah, and don't forget second star on the right, straight on till midnight. Is that the directions?
Till 2 a.m.
Till 2 a.m.
Usually when the bars close, right?
You got to go a little bit past it. You need to hit closing hour. Hey, honey, take me home. I promise you I'm a fairy.
Oh.
Yeah. We got to stop on the way home, though, for some industrial strength lubricants and Virginia Slim cigarettes.
Keep most of that in my purse.
I keep a tub of petroleum jelly in my purse at all times. All right, everybody. Good night.
Check us out next week. Bye.
Yeah, bye.